Digitally, good afternoon to all respected venerable online participants who join us today. For the new joint participant, we welcome you to the International Buddhist Conference, the Pali Sanskrit Tradition, Day 2. For this afternoon session, the technical session 3, Paññā-sikkhā and Prajñā-Śikṣā forum, I would like to invite our chairperson, Professor Asanga Tarakani from Sri Lanka, to hold this session. He's an emeritus professor of Buddhist study, founder head of department from Buddhist University Colombo, and founder of Sri Lanka Association Buddhist Study of Darivi Foundation of Social Economics Spiritual Development Colombo, and also professor as an editor of Chief Encyclopedia of Buddhist Department of Buddhist Affairs Government of Sri Lanka. Without further delay, let us welcome Professor Asanga Tarakani. Please, Professor, your floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casey, for introducing me. And also, I should like to begin by thanking Tibetan Buddhist Center and the organization for inviting me to chair this session. Good afternoon, very good afternoon to everybody, His Holiness Dalai Lama, and all the distinguished panelists for this afternoon, and the learned discussants, and all the participants from all over the world. Again, very good afternoon from Sri Lanka. Today we have in the Buddhist path, we have the third aspect, Paññā or Prajñā, for our discussion. We know that in the past sessions, you have been discussing Sila and Samadhi, the two early aspects of the path, and today we have the final aspect of the paths to liberation, Vimukti or Vimukti. Also, we use the term Visuddhi or Vishuddhi, or the purity. So the path to purity, Visuddhi Magga or Vishuddhi Marga, and path to liberation, Vimukti Magga or Vimukti Marga. As we know, the path taught by the Buddha is gradual, and also it is integrative path, and also cumulative path. So everything coming together and culminating in Paññā, and Sila Samadhi Paññā or Sila Samadhi Prajñā, ultimately leading to Samyak Jnana and Samyak Vimukti. Jnana, knowledge, and the Vimukti, the liberation, is the final goal. So the path is to ultimately attain liberation or freedom. So with that brief introduction, let me introduce the speaker, the first speaker for today. So we have got a very learned, erudite, capable group of Buddhist scholars and Buddhist practitioners speaking to us this afternoon. So we have as presenters Venerable Untitled from Thai tradition, Venerable Thep An from Vietnamese Sanskrit tradition, and then Dr. Ken Puon Guang Jodeng from Tibetan Sanskrit tradition, and also Venerable Dr. Kurakat Norue Vinita Thero from Sri Lankan tradition. And then we have as discussants Venerable Aggachitta from Myanmar Burmese tradition, and also discussant Venerable Shi Chuan Guan and Venerable Tasi Sering as our discussants. So let me invite Venerable Anil Chakya from Thai Pali Theravada tradition to start this afternoon's proceedings on Paññā. Venerable.
Okay, first of all, pay my homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. My homage to His Holiness Dalai Lama and all venerables and all the scholars who are joining in this very important and kind of a COVID reflection of how we use technology in order to enhance our knowledge. Of course, my responsibility is to talk about the Paññā. One of the final part of the what I call threefold training is called Paññā-sikkhā or Prajñā-Śikṣā. When we talk about the concept of Paññā or the Prajñā, it occupies that in Buddhism it is so important that when we place the idea of a Paññā in a stereological theory, we'll see that the Buddhism itself is all about Paññā, all about wisdom. It's all about knowledge. The word, the Buddha, actually, is again another synonyms for the word Paññā, means that to know, to able to understand as they really are. So if we really go with the word Paññā, there's just so many varieties of words and phrases we can say. We can see that there are quite a lot. You know, simply to translate in English, you can say wisdom, gnosis, insight, understanding, intuitive knowledge, cognitions, and the list go on and so on and on. But however, when we talk about the Paññā or the Prajñā in Sanskrit, Paññā in Pali, the word, the pa and pra itself play a very important role in it. Because we have very similar word like a viññāna, which is the prefix, is different than the Paññā. We have a sanya, again the prefix is sa instead of a pa. We have a pariññā, we have a abhiññā, and so many other words, which actually all started with the root verb of a ñā or the gya. And basically, when with the prefix, whatever you added, especially with the pa, it shows that there's a different kind of knowledge, different kind of understanding, different kind of wisdom is mentioned in Buddhism. With the Paññā, it's very clear. Pa means that the circumstances. Pa means that it is seeing through. Pa means that you are able to see in front. So in a sense, when you say the Paññā, it's a kind of a knowledge which we can utilize in a very different way in order to prevent, in order to develop, in order to achieve the ultimate goal, what we are looking for. So therefore, when we talk about Paññā, I would say that Paññā in Pali tradition or Paññā in Buddhism as a whole is both, it works as a means, it is a way in order to go there, in order to reach there, the called path. At the same time, Paññā is at the ends, is the ultimate goal as well. So we start with the Paññā as a learning, as an aspiring, as an inquiry mind to learn something. And then when we achieve the ultimate goal, we have become Buddha, we have become the one who knows, one who become the Paññāvā, one who has a knowledge, one who able to see, we call vipassanas, able to see through everything, just like an X-ray way of seeing that. So this is how the Paññā play a very important role. So therefore, when we're able to see the way, cognition is called what I call yatha bhuta. We are able to see as it is. Therefore, it is very interestingly said in the Samyutta Nikaya, and as well as in the life of Buddha, is that Buddhism is in fact a religion of wisdom, is a religion of Paññā. It was very clear from the idea when Sariputta, when invited his master, it's a Sanjaya, to say that we have found the best teacher, let's go and to become a disciple of the Buddha. The Venerable Sanjaya, the master of the Venerable Sariputta, what simply says that, well, yeah, Buddha is Buddha is good, but what about this world? In this world, what is the population, whether it's a stupid one or the wise one? And Sariputta says that, of course, there are more stupid in the world. One was unknown is a more number than the wise one. Then he simply says that, okay, then let me become a leader of the stupid is rather than the disciple of the wise one. So in a sense that in the time of the contemporary of Buddhism, the Buddhist teaching was in a way that is upgraded as a level of for someone who is wise. And similarly, again, in the Samyutta Nikaya, you can see that Buddha again mentioned himself that his teaching is fit for someone who has a Paññā, who is a deficit of Paññā, is not able to practice. So in a way that if we look at the perspective from the Paññā itself, Buddhism is a religion of Paññā, a religion of wisdom. So without the Paññā, we would not be able to understand the whole series of what we practice. Buddhism is the theory in a sense, but at the same time, it is also the path to achieve ultimate goal. So in order to practice Buddhism in the modern world, I guess, we have to refer to the Apannaka Sutta. In the Apannaka Sutta, again, is well defined, well explained that the teaching of the Buddha, it doesn't need to be rely on any faith. Someone who adhere in something else, some god or deities or whatever, but still, they can still follow the Buddhism without having any faith. So again, in Apannaka Sutta, sort of a very, very emphasized that the way to achieve what we call liberation, the nirvana, is, totally rely on the understanding how we understand the things. When we think in that sense, basically what simply, I guess that a very simple example will be in a Pali tradition, we have a very, what you call this, the beginning phrase called Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. In fact, even the simple mantra is reflecting the Paññā-sikkhā here, reflecting the importance of the Paññā here. When we say Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, generally we translate it as a kind of worshiping the Buddha, but don't forget that in Buddhism, the true worship is a practice. Buddhism is a path. So therefore, what actually saying that Bhagavato is equal to Sila, Arahato is equal to Samadhi, and Samma Sambuddha is a self-realization of who you are is the Paññā there. And generally, that is a format we have developed in a sense that it is not only the idea of the teaching as a theory, but we also use it as a mantra as a pay in the daily chanting. So about this Sila Samadhi Paññā, in many ways we take it as a gradual process, gradual practice. When you talk about practice, Sila is a foundation of Samadhi, Samadhi is a foundation of Paññā. But I see a little bit differently on that. Because when the Sila Samadhi Paññā-sikkhā is another form of what we call an Eightfold Noble Path. So therefore, we are saying the Sila Samadhi Sikkhā in English as a threefold noble path. So when we say it is a threefold, we have to think whether it's a gradual or it is a kind of one in another. In fact, if we are understanding the Eightfold Noble Path as a one in another, I would say that the Sila Samadhi Paññā also works in a similar way as a part of a one another. In order to have a Sila, without the knowledge of what is Sila, you wouldn't be able to practice, you wouldn't be able to preserve the Sila. In order to have a Samadhi, you doesn't know what is Samadhi yourself, you don't have able to have a Samadhi. So you can see the role of Paññā is everywhere. Even in the level of Sila, you need to have a sort of a understanding of a Sila itself, but once you develop in a more deeper level, then it's become a kind of what we call the liberation point. So that's why I would say that it's ends and means. In Pali, you will see that there's a lot of other words, like a Sammaditthi is also kind of Paññā, the liberating view. I would call it liberating view, because the word Samma here, generally we always try to translate as a right or kind of proper or kind of perfect. But I prefer to go with the etymology of the word Samma, which means that have an effect of calming all the kilesa, all the defilements. So I go say as a liberating view. So it can, the view which can take you to the upper level of liberation. So Samma Sankappa is another word for the Paññā. Sampajanya, the consciousness, another word for the Paññā. Dhamma Vichaya, another word for the Paññā. Vimangsa, also another word for the Paññā. Jnana is another word for Paññā. So you can go and on with this lot of words. If you go to the, again, Vibhanga, the Pali Apadana, Abhidhana, then you will see another, about 16, 17 another synonyms for the word Paññā. So Paññā is a kind of faculty as a Paññindriya. Sanya is a power as a Paññā Bala. So you can see a lot of Paññā in a way how you use the Paññā itself. in order to be fulfill your own, what we call Buddhahood, you need to have a Paññā paramita again. You have to fulfill the Paññā again. So the whole idea of the Paññā as a cognitive, kind of cognition is very different from the normal cognitive in a psychology, I guess. When we say that a Paññā is a cognition, kind of a cognition, is that we have to have that ability to see things thoroughly. What the see things thoroughly means that it's a rationality. You have to see the rising and the falling. You are able to see the dukkha and the nirodha. So this is the whole idea of what we call is Paññā in Buddhism. So we have to, in order to develop this whole practice, of course, we have to have what we call is Ñāta Pariññā. Because when we talk about the Four Noble Truths or whatever, Ñāta Pariññā, able to know for yourself, able to know for this, whatever, learn it. And then you are able to Tirana Pariññā, is a cognition through thorough understanding, thorough kind of investigation. Once you get from the sensory, then we have to have a Pahana Pariññā, which means that able to abandon everything. So these are the, whatever of all the phenomena, all the dhammas, if you use the Pariññā, if you use the Paññā in a sense, then you will see that you are able to get through that. Then once you are able to get through this, what happened? It is very clear in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Again, it says that all these five ascetic become a Chakkung Udapadi, Jnanang Udapadi, Paññā Udapadi, Vijja Udapadi, Aloka Udapadi. What are those? Actually, those are the 5 different levels of Paññā, which is very, very unique in Buddhism. When we are talking about a knowledge, intelligence, whatever in the modern world, we are talking about only 2nd level of the Paññā in the Dhammacakkappavattana sense. The Chakkung Udapadi means kind of, it is a visionary level. We need to have a kind of our senses in order to understand things. And the second one is that we have the Jnanang Udapadi, means an insight level. Then we have to have a Paññā Udapadi, discernment level. And then we have to have a knowledge level, what we call a Vijja Udapadi, which can destroy all the avijja. And then only we'll have a eliminating level that is called Aloka Udapadi. So you will see that there are the 5 different types of Paññā, which can lead you to the Arahatship, these are liberations. Then the Paññā is, my final point is that I would like to share with you is that actually, when we talk about the Sikkhā, it is a threefold training. It is a gist, it is the essence of a Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta is a kind of essence of Buddhism in a way. When we talk about
we should gradually wind up. Okay.
Okay. So Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta's main idea is that the Eightfold Noble Path. In the Eightfold Noble Path is another form is that what we call is threefold training. So in the threefold training, basically, it is the same achievement we are talking about with the world. We are talking about the world is a sustainable development. And then the same thing actually, sustainable development is actually Dhammacakka. Because sustain means that it's a dharmic development. So while the world is going for the sustainable development, actually Buddha has shown us, in Buddhism, it has shown us that in order to achieve not only economic and social development, but equally we have to develop our mental development by following this three sikkhā, the sila and samadhi and paññā. And out of this, all these three, the paññā play the most important role in order to able us to kind of balance both the mundane prosperity as well as spiritual prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dr. Anil Shakya. It's a mine of information. I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but so important. So thank you again very much, Venerable. Then we will move on to the presenter number 2. It is Venerable Te Pap An. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. I don't know. It's from Vietnam, representing the Sanskrit tradition. So let me invite the presenter number 2, Venerable Te Pap An, for his presentation. Venerable.
Your Holiness, Professor Asanga Tilakaratna, respected venerables, respected scholar and participants. My teacher, Zen Master Thích Nhất Hạnh in Vietnam, has asked me to convey his love and to express his deep gratitude to you for bringing different Buddhist traditions and schools together for this important conference. It truly embodies the spirit of the Avatamsaka Sutra, on which he has based his life teaching about interbeing and interconnectedness. I'm honored to join this distinguished international gathering from my base at the European Institute of Applied Buddhism, EIAB, in Germany, and to share some thoughts on wisdom prajna from the perspective of the Plum village tradition. As some may know, our tradition comes from Vietnam and has roots in both the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. Anyone coming to a Plum village practice center is introduced to the practice of mindfulness in daily life. At the end of our retreats, each participant is invited to take the 5 mindfulness trainings. These are the Buddha's 5 precepts rewritten and expanded upon by our teacher. In our tradition, taking and practicing the 5 mindfulness trainings in daily life is considered a concrete expression of prajna, wisdom and insight, as well as a manifestation of sila, ethical living, and samadhi concentration. In Plum village, we see a strong connection between wisdom and awareness. Each of the 5 mindfulness trainings starts with awareness of the suffering caused by ... With mindfulness, we are aware of what is going on in our bodies, our feelings, our minds, and the world, and we avoid doing harm to ourselves and others. Mindfulness protects us, our family, and our society. When we are mindful, we can see that by refraining from doing one thing, we can prevent another thing from happening. We arrive at our own unique insight. It is not something imposed on us by an outside authority. Practicing the mindfulness trainings does bring us wisdom and insight. It is entirely possible that no one shall ever be able to experience the wisdom and insight the Buddha experiences 2,500 years ago in his enlightenment, nor truly to understand the depth of his teaching in every aspect. However, it is possible to agree that the journey to enlightenment of Siddhartha, the Buddha to be, began with dukkha, suffering, feelings of dissatisfaction with his privileged life, and a yearning for a holy, noble life worth living. According to the Buddhist worldview, we wander endlessly around cycles of lives of suffering, and that is called samsara. Understanding our own dukkha and finding our ways out of samsara is therefore the main concern of Buddhists. It is also what distinguishes Buddhism from other intellectual disciplines that attempt to attain knowledge, be it spiritual or secular. In the Plum village tradition, dukkha begins to arise and to accumulate in us because we are not able to be present for life in the here and now. Throughout our day, we have a tendency to be carried away by strong emotions over what is happening right now, or to dwell on regrets about the past, or to lose ourselves in projections and fears about our future. This inability to be anchored and fully aware in the present leads to confusion and lack of understanding of our own situation and of conditions in the world around us. The energy of ignorance and lack of insight accumulates and becomes our character, our will or volition. It becomes the foundation of our personal samsara. Most of the time, we have all the conditions for happiness around us in the present moment. For example, our eyes are in good condition, our ears are in good condition, and we can smell our food, unlike many unfortunate people infected with COVID-19. But still, we are not happy. We feel we are lacking something, missing something. We are looking for a happiness that goes beyond our already good condition. The Buddha's breakthrough was to pinpoint where the problem lies, namely that our body and our mind are not united. In its confused state, our bodies try to send signals to the mind and vice versa, but neither is listening to the other. So we waste energy. We do not have enough energy to take care of ourselves, each other, our family, or our community. We simply do not have enough energy to wake up to the fact we are missing the wonders of life in the present moment. When, however, the body and the mind are in a blissful state, when they are working in harmony with each other, we stop wasting energy. We have a chance to wake up to our life and to the many good conditions around us. This is the foundation of the solution that the Buddha discovered. From a Plumvillage perspective, the purpose of the three trainings is to help the body and the mind be in harmony with each other. We practice them so that the body and the mind can be one, unified, and that gradually we may accumulate and collect within us the energy we need to awaken. When, however, the body and the mind are in a blissful state, when they are working in harmony with each other, we stop wasting energy. We have a chance to wake up to our life and to the many good conditions around us. This is the foundation of the Buddha, the solution that the Buddha discovered. With our mindfulness, gradually we build samadhi. Mindfulness and samadhi together become a torch, lighting our path toward a different way of living, one that embodies sila. Thanks to the combination of all these elements, mindfulness, samadhi, and sila, we become wise. We wake up from our ignorance, confusion, and lack of understanding, and we are liberated. This ripening of our practice is experiences is a breakthrough in our perception about ourselves and in our perspective of the world around us. Suddenly, we know we shall never be the same again. Wisdom has propelled us beyond our old way of living to a different level of existence. That, for me, is the life-changing implication of prajna. While Buddhists have a common starting point, dukkha and samsara, Buddhism has developed many ways and styles of living as illustrated by the various schools and traditions present at this conference. Whatever the school or traditions, they all are concerned with providing meaningful solution to the problem of suffering. For each tradition, the way of life represents its wisdom. As the Avatamsaka Sutta say, all Buddhist teachings penetrate one teaching. One teaching penetrates all Buddhist teaching. The interpenetration of sila, samadhi, and prajna has been central to my mindfulness practice in nearly 30 years as a monk. We can imagine that the three trainings is three elements interacting within a spiral. Some of us enter the spiral with a dualistic view, seeing the practice in terms of samsara and nirvana. At this point, as we strengthen our commitment to leading a holy life, sila plays a dominant role. Spiraling mindfully toward the center, we discover that all these trainings, sila, samadhi, and prajna, are embedded. At each twist and turn of our spiral, one of these trainings play a leading role while the other two play a supporting role. The closer we get to the center, the less dualistic our view of the practice becomes. That is because there, at the center, nirvana and samsara inter-are. At that point, prajna takes over to guide our practice. Different Buddhist schools have come up with their own way of prioritizing the different elements of the three trainings as they practice and of understanding the nature of the enlightened one and his enlightenment. Hence, they have different views on prajna and the path to prajna. As we know, these schools are broadly divided into southern and northern tradition. In the southern tradition, which has preserved its ancient form, The path has evolved into one of analyzing the mind at microscopic level. We dissect our object of investigation into smaller units so that we can investigate and understand each one more deeply. We develop a discriminative understanding of these minute experiences and of the mind's microscopic responses. We discover that our mind continuously moves because it cannot be satisfied with the present. It begins to crave, and that is the origin of suffering. In the Southern tradition interpretation of the Abhidharma, to have wisdom is to have full perception of this dynamic movement of consciousness at the microscopic level, to be able to eliminate craving and to taste the fruit of an arahat. That is the solution, to be released forever from our suffering. It happens in a flash of consciousness that moves us from samsara to nirvana. In the Mahayana tradition of the Northern tradition, the approach is one of synthesis. We do not go into microscopic analysis of the movement of the mind and consciousness. Rather, we take a macroscopic look at the balance of our behavior. We see that these are based on our views, our notions, our idea. We see that suffering comes from the confusion and negative energy that accumulates because we grasp onto our views and mistake them for reality. Suffering accumulates over time due to our views. The Mahayana synthesizing process has given rise to multiple solutions to the problem of dukkha and how to deal with samsara. The Prajñā-Paramita Sutra tells us that all views are one-sided and true reality cannot be grasped or perceived by any view, abstract notion, or idea. The solution to our suffering is thus to have emptiness of view and to experience nirvana right in the midst of samsara, that is to live a life of no birth and no death, whilst riding the waves of birth and death. Once we have a good grasp of the mind, we can touch the domain of suchness, which in the later Lotus Sutra is regarded as having two dimensions, the ultimate dimension and the historical dimension. Vietnamese Zen master Mañña, who lived in the 11th century, expressed suchness well in a verse announcing he was ill. When spring goes, 100 flowers wither. When springs come, 100 flowers bloom. One occurring after another. Life passes before our eyes. Old age descends upon our head. Do not be deceived that all flowers wither as spring ends. Last night, beyond the veranda, a Plum branch. As sentient beings, we are by nature empty, according to the Northern tradition. But the Northern tradition also recognizes that as conscious humans, we have a deep intuition that our existence amounts to something more. This has given rise to different Mahayana Sutra and schools exploring the idea of Buddha nature and Tathagata, Buddha embryo, literally the womb of the thus come one. The Lotus Sutra implicitly speaks about Buddha nature and of the possibility of overcoming our spiritual poverty as a prodigal Buddhist son, so we may reclaim our sovereignty as a Buddha. There is also the mind-only manifestation of the Yogacara tradition. In the Mahayana, we have Bodhisattva, enlightened beings who return to samsara to help all living beings. We have Chan wanderers who, like Chinese Taoists, live a life of freedom from fear because they know that all three realms, desire, form, and formlessness, are only manifestation of our mind. We have Tibetan Siddhas who full of extraordinary psychic and spiritual powers and of wisdom, have realized Buddhahood in their very body. Again, different Buddhist traditions have different ways of investigating the common problem of dukkha and samsara. But all the tradition offers solution. Their practice and path are determined by their choice of how to approach the object of suffering and by how wisdom is cultivated. Plum's solution is derived from multiple elements that include the Vietnamese Zen tradition of engaging actively with society, revitalized by Zen Master Paññā-sikkhā as engaged Buddhism, the teachings of the Avatamsaka Sutta interbeing, and the intellectual openness toward current understandings of neuroscience, psychology, and physical sciences. Applying all such elements and understandings so we may develop wisdom and solve the problem of dukkha and samsara has evolved into a way of life at Plum Buddhist Practice Center and at AIAB. We contemplate deeply about suffering. We develop a perspective on it, and we transform that perspective into a way of living that is guided and defined by mindfulness. However, his long and eventful life, my teacher Zen Master Paññā-sikkhā has helped countless students by distilling complex Buddhist teachings into succinct phrases. Notably, there's no way to enlightenment, enlightenment is the way, and there's no path to peace, peace is the path. Today, my teacher is 95 years old. He resides peacefully in his root temple in Hue, central Vietnam, where some 80 years ago, he became a novice. His entire life has been to walk and teach the path of wisdom as a way to build a beloved Sangha of peace and compassion. All of us in the Plum Buddhist tradition aspire to follow his core insight that there's no path to wisdom, wisdom is the path. May the fruit of this international Buddhist conference on the 3 trainings benefit all living beings. Thank you so much for your deep listening.
Thank you very much, Venerable Tepapan. We all also wish your teacher good health and longevity. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Having listened to the 2 presentations, I see quite a lot of similarities, and we are saying virtually the same thing in somewhat different phrases. I will have some more comments on this later. Let me move into the third.
Professor Asanga, your voice is too soft. Can you speak louder?
See, I have to get angry in order to shout, that's okay. So let me move into the third presenter, Dr. Khenpo Nguyen Joden. He's from Tibetan Sanskrit tradition. So next we will listen to Dr. Venerable Khenpo Nguyen Joden. Venerable.
Namo Gurube, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sangaya. My respectful venerations to all the venerables and Professor Asanga Tilakaratne and all the Dhamma brothers and sisters. So I'm supposed to be talking about wisdom or the Prajñā, right? Which is among the 3 folds of training, namely moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. So of course, these 3 are the practices that, when you claim yourself to be Buddhist, we should be practicing them, right? But why? Why do we have to practice these 3? For what purpose? I think everybody should really know about this. When you do something, when you undertake something, there should be a reason for it, right? When you study something, you want to know something so that you can use that knowledge into making your life a little bit better or something like that. So same thing applies here also. Why do we have to practice these 3 folds of training? And I think all the Buddhist traditions agree that these 3 practices are given by the Buddha, recommended by the Buddha, and then later on, all the scholars have interpreted or maybe gave lots and lots of explanations of how to practice these three. All of them said for the purpose of achieving liberation or perfect Buddhahood, right? So then you have to ask yourself, why? Why do I have to achieve either liberation or perfect Buddhahood? Why? Because the truth of the matter is that the current life that we have, that the place we are in is called samsara, right? And one who is not satisfied with the life that you are living in this samsara, then you seek for something better, right? And so for those, then these three folds of trainings were given. So that's why first you really have to identify yourself, why you are doing this, for what purpose. Of course, the thing is this dissatisfaction with samsara, right? Something you are very tired of the samsaric life. You are fatigued with the samsaric life, right? So for that reason, then I think very first thing that even yesterday, like speaker Thakur Shabru Rinpoche said, I think most of us who are claim to be Buddhist practitioners always looking for something very exotic, something very higher practice, like a practice on the emptiness or union of clarity and emptiness, or maybe in particular in Tibetan case like Dzogchen and Mahamudra and so forth and so on, but then ignoring or maybe in a way neglecting the fundamental practices, which is to develop renunciation thought. Renunciation thought meaning doesn't necessarily mean only the monastic orders, monks and nuns have to do it. No, everybody. If you really care for achieving liberation or perfect Buddhahood, that's the way. Then you cannot have both. These two are contradiction, right? Because the liberation is like a nirvana, and the samsara is the opposite of it. Samsara is something that you always go through, uneasiness, like a discomfort and unsatisfactoriness and so forth and so on. And then, the opposite of that, nirvana is like out of those suffering, beyond those suffering, right? You are then in peace, you are in tranquility or so forth and so on. So that's the reason you seek for it, but then, you don't think about what you have to do. You have to let go of the samsaric experience. Samsara, you have to abandon, right? Then, and only then, you will be able to achieve liberation or perfect Buddhahood. So for that reason, then these three practices becomes very, very important and useful, right? That's why these trainings were given. So in other words, the threefold of training or the practices is the essence of all the Buddha's teachings that he has given for over 40 years. So everything then has to have a skillful means of how to practice, because he has given teachings for over 40 years, and how can we combine this all together in practice? So that's why these three folds of training is the methodology of how to combine all the teachings into practice. So that's why moral discipline is the overall foundation, without which you cannot even start anything. But even before this moral discipline, as I said, you really have to have another foundation, which is the thought of renunciation, right? You want to get rid of this samsara. You want to let go of this samsara. And then for that, then first you have to have a moral discipline. And on this sound moral discipline, then you can cultivate the one-pointed concentration, right? And so that's why the immediate foundation for one-pointed concentration is the moral discipline. And then one-pointed concentration becomes an immediate foundation for the wisdom or the prajna, right? And so, however, as I think earlier presenters also mentioned, that the prajna or the wisdom has to be found everywhere with the moral discipline, with concentration, because the wisdom is the opposite of not knowing. Wisdom is the opposite of ignorance, right? So if you don't know what is moral discipline, how to practice moral discipline, then practice of moral discipline will be not possible. So that's why there you have to have a certain amount of wisdom for that. Similarly, one-pointed concentration too, you need to know about it, how to do it, right? And so that's why, again, another certain amount of required wisdom has to be there. And then finally, the wisdom itself, the real practice of the prajna, right? And so these three, the one being the foundation, the next being the foundation, again, it is actually mentioned by Vasubandhu in his Abhidharma Kosha. And he said that the moral discipline is like a foundation on which meaning the moral discipline, then you have to cultivate the wisdom of listening, or in other words, study. And then whatever you study after, you have to contemplate on it, analyze the meaning that you understood, and then finally put everything together into real meditation. So this is the cultivation of prajna all over, based on the basis of moral discipline, right? Then now, as I said, when it comes to wisdom, there are different kinds of wisdoms. Wisdom cultivated through study, contemplation, and finally meditation. But then, now we are talking about all these practices in order for us to be able to attain liberation or perfect enlightenment, right? And so for the perfect enlightenment or the liberation, what is holding us actually back in this samsara, instead of being there in the nirvana or state of nirvana or state of perfect enlightenment, is the kleshas, right? We have all these different kleshas, particularly the root of kleshas that is holding us back in this samsara is the grasping to ourself, self-grasping. So as long as you have self-grasping, the liberation or the nirvana or the perfect enlightenment is not possible, right? With all different kinds of practices, you may be able to make your life a little bit more comfortable compared to other situations. However, you will not be able to go beyond samsara. So that's why you need to get rid of the kleshas, particularly the grasping to the self. So that's why the wisdom of realizing selflessness is the most important, important part of the wisdom. Mm-hmm.
Well, you may gradually wind up now, gradually.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How much time do I have?
No, you can gradually wind up. You can take other one.
Okay. Anyway, so this wisdom now, wisdom of realizing selflessness is the important part, the most important, that can actually release you from samsara. Until you have this wisdom of realizing selflessness, you will not be able to get rid of self-grasping. And as long as you have self-grasping, then Nagarjuna says, so long as you have self-grasping, then you give rise to, he says, as long as you have grasping to the aggregates, then you have self-grasping. Through the self-grasping, then you accumulate karma. And that is how you, are bound. You are bound in samsara. You cannot escape from it. So therefore, be realistic, right? When you are claiming to be a Buddhist practitioner, there's no such thing as quick fix or easy way to get to the nirvana or liberation without really letting go of samsaric sensual kind of experience, or so forth and so on. So that's why very straightforward, right? If you want to go to the other shore of the samsara, you have to let go of samsara. And in order to do that, you have to cultivate the wisdom realizing selflessness. And that selflessness also is now in the Mahayana text. It's divided into selflessness of Pudgala, or the person, and selflessness of phenomena, right? Just in order to get achieve nirvana or the liberation, the realization of the selflessness of person is enough. However, if your target, your goal is to be able to achieve the perfect Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, that is the Mahayana version of the goal of practice, then you really have to realize the not only selflessness of person, but also selflessness of phenomena, right? So, but then the realization that the practice of realizing such a selflessness is how? If you ask that question, then you have to first engage in the analytical meditation of, for example, self-grasping. Where is the self? Self of person, right? Self of person is possibly like looking at your body. Then you have to go through all your body from top to the bottom. Where is the self? This way, analyzing this way, you cannot find self, right? Therefore, intellectually, you understand that there's no self. I couldn't find it anywhere. And similarly, phenomena too. So for example, the phenomena means the other things like beside this body, then your house, your relatives, your country, and so forth. Them too, also, if you analyze this way, you cannot find the countryness or your houseness. There's no such thing as houseness. House is a conglomeration of so many things put together, and you just label it as a house. Well, where is the houseness, right? So this way, analytically, you cannot find. And then after analytically examining it, then you have to put this into your inner practice from within. When you realize this selflessness of person, of selflessness of phenomena, then there will be the real, actual, direct realization of that selflessness is called not even, selflessness, not even emptiness. This is called the freedom from all elaborations.
Honorable, I think this is a good point to wind up.
Okay, so freedom from all elaborations makes you free from all the entanglements of the samsara, and that is called enlightenment. So I will leave there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dr. Genpo Guan Joden. Thank you very much for the very informative presentation. Next, we will move into Theravada tradition Sri Lanka. Before that, let me, the viewers and the listeners, remind you that we are accepting questions. So if ever you have any questions, kindly you can type into the chat room. Please be concise, very brief. and then we will see how we can accommodate all your questions, but there is no guarantee that we can answer all the questions, but do send your questions, please. Okay, we will move into Venerable Dr. Kudakatnoruwe Vinita Thera from Sri Lanka. He will be taking us back to Pali Theravada tradition. Venerable Vinita.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. The chair of this session, one of the prominent scholar in Sri Lanka, Professor Asanga Tilakaratne, and presenters, Venerable Sirs, friends in Dhamma. And I would like to thank Mr. Porage because he invited me 2 days ago for this conference. Professor, I would say before starting the presentation, without knowing anything about the presentation of Untitled Venerable Bhante, I make this presentation from Theravada tradition. Now I'm going to share my presentation on the screen. Right. My presentation topic is the concept of wisdom from Theravada perspective. As introduction, I'd like to say something in here. The concept of wisdom interpreted in many ways in religious and philosophical discussions in any languages. However, the Buddhism is divided into different traditions in later period. But luckily, through the three things, it means the precepts, sila, concentration, and wisdom, the three sikkhā generally accepted as the basis for spiritual development by all the traditions, luckily. That's why you can manage this type of one platform for us. However, I think the interpretations on the nature and the consequences of the wisdom is different in terms of different traditions. I think I represent from Theravada tradition. The Theravada tradition based on primarily in Pali Tripitaka, Sutra, Vinaya, and Abhidhamma. Its commentaries, Atthakatha, and sub-commentaries also further based on the Theravada tradition. Accordingly, broad interpretation on the wisdom is evident in the Theravada tradition also. My objective and limit of this presentation attempts to explain with reference to Mahachattārisaka Sutta in Majjhima Nikāya, third part of the Majjhima Nikāya, how the concept of wisdom has been interpreted in context on three trainings or three sikkhā. I think Venerable Anil explained these words. Several terms are used to describe wisdom in Theravada Buddhist literature. These words, all the words started from one root cause, it means nya. Depending on that root cause, nya, we can see some words on the screen now. For an example, the words consciousness, viññāna, perception, saññā, wisdom, paññā, full understand, it means overall understand, pariññā, prefix, it has added a prefix with pari plus ñā, pariññā. And supernormal knowledge or deep, Pali word is abhiññā, abhi plus ñā. However, knowledge, jnana, etc. associate with the wisdom, which of the each word implies the level or characteristics of the knowledge. I have given some example in here, but I'm not going to explain word by word. In briefly, those words started from one root cause, nya mean no, but it has given different meanings. As the example, Saññā Sutta, Paññā-Patilabha Sutta, Pariññā Sutta, Abhiññā Sutta, it has given different sense for the knowledge. But we can see some similarities and dissimilarities in other places also. There are instances where the above words are used in a similar or different sense to the word wisdom. However, we can see another two words I highlighted in here. Abhi Sambodhi, prefix Abhi plus Sambodhi. Abhi Sambodhi means the highest enlightenment. Abhi Sambujjati, Abhi mean the prefix, Abhi Sambujjati mean fully awakened. These words especially mention the liberation, nirvana, dependent on wisdom. Right. Depending on that words, I am going to introduce something from Theravada perspective about the wisdom in Trisikha. There are so many words and meanings in the Theravada literature, but I selected especially the, I told you, Majjhima Nikaya Mahachattārisaka Sutta, I think, which is the most important sutta to discuss the Trisikha. Why that? Before that, I told you the Theravada tradition depend on the commentaries and sub-commentaries also. Sile patithaya narosa panyo chittang panyang cha bhavyang. Visuddhimagga, the path to purification by Buddha Ghosa. An intelligent person established in morality with developed mind and wisdom. Sapanyo naro, wise person, practice the sila and meditation for the wisdom. The wise person depending on that, we can explain this chart from Mahachattārisaka Sutta. Sapanyo naro, all of us from birth, we didn't have any knowledge about the Dhamma. We had a free mind. But after that, we studied, learned so many things. Then we can improve our knowledge. The primary knowledge, according to the Mahachattārisaka Sutta, the eightfold path divided for three. First, right view, Sammaditthi, and right intention, Samma Sankappa, it has included for Paññā. Generally, we use in this conference also Sila, Samadhi, Paññā. That is our general usage. But according to this sutta, the arrangement is different: Paññā, Sila, and Samadhi. But the important thing is, in this sutta, there are 10 elements. The most of time we can see the suttas eightfold path, it means 8 elements. But in here, we can see 10 elements. I think Professor Asanga, who mentioned the last two starting the session. In here, the first part, wisdom, Paññā. I use the word wisdom because of this conference. The first part, Paññā, actually, which is the primary knowledge. From birth, we didn't have knowledge about the Dhamma or anything. Hearing or listening the Dhamma and contemplating the Dhamma, yoniso manasikara, according to the Paññā-buddhi Sutta, associating with the good friends and listening to the Dhamma and contemplating to the Dhamma, practicing to the Dhamma, Sappurisa Sangseva, Dhamma Savana, yoniso manasikara, Dhammanu Dhamma Patipanna, according to the Paññā-buddhi Sutta. According to my knowledge, I think it is Anguttara Nikaya. Depending on these kind of practices, especially listening to the Dhamma and contemplating yoniso manasikara, we can gain the primary knowledge, the Sammaditthi and Samma Sankappa. Depending on that primary knowledge, we can be an intelligent person. The intelligent person can practice the sila, right speech, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, bodily conduct, and right livelihood. It means the Samma Ajiva. That's the sila. I think yesterday discussed about that. However, depending on the Paññā, the followers can practice the sila, should practice the sila. The third part is according to this chart, concentration, samadhi or meditation, cultivation of the mind. Last presenters mentioned about that. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Samma vayama, samma sati, samma samadhi. In this sutta clearly mentioned all the sila samadhi. It means moral conduct, moral behaviors, and meditation depend on the paññā, especially right view. It means sammaditthi. Anyone don't have the sammaditthi, it will be a miccādutthi, wrong view. With the wrong view, people practice the wrong moral conduct and wrong samadhi, etc. According to this sutta, I would like to say in here, the people should be intelligence with the Dhamma first. Without knowing anything of the Dhamma, people cannot practice the Samma, Sila, or moral practice. Can't do the real meditation according to the teachings of the Buddha. If we can gain the knowledge, this kind of conferences, Dhammadesana, preachings, discussions, so all the things I think linked to the first part of the Trisikha. For the knowledge, with the knowledge, we can cultivate the another steps. However, according to the Mahācattarisaka Sutta, the important part is the fourth one, higher wisdom or paññā, that is the perfect knowledge. Right knowledge, samma jnana, and right freedom, samma vimutti. Samma jnana and samma vimukti is more important. Why that? The special thing is people cannot practice this wisdom. This cannot be practiced. If you can practice above 3 points, 3 sikkhā, you will have a full understanding. You will have a full understanding depending on the paññā, sila, samadhi. That's why in here mentioned as the fourth one, Paññā-sikkhā. That is not a Paññā-sikkhā. Paññā-sikkhā will be a first. But in the fourth stage, not a sikkhā, that is not a sekha. Enlightened one, Buddha, Pachek, Buddha, and Arahant, especially the Arahant, understood these three. It means right knowledge, samma jnana. Samma jnana means adhi jnana according to the Pali. Adhi paññā means knowing or realize the reality of the everything according to the Dhamma. And samma vimutta, it means samma vimutti means right freedom or liberation. It means nirvana. The nirvana means nirvana erased all the defilements. In here, I want to highlight something. According to the above chart, the 10 elements of the way of purification clearly show the gradual development of the spiritual life. In the order, real wisdom is obtained by attaining the spiritual status of the Buddha, Pacheka Buddha, Arahant, etc. In Theravada tradition, to understand perfect wisdom is to understand the three nature or characteristics of the existence. All
will gradually wind up.
Okay, thank you, sir. Depending on Trisikkhā, Sila, Prajñā, Sila, Samadhi, according to our tradition, Yada Paññāya Passati. Yada Paññāya Passati. When one sees this with insight, wisdom, one becomes wary of dukkha. It means impermanent and suffering and not self. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. That is the vidarshana, three existence, or the nature of all the things. So therefore, my conclusion, the three trainings of the precepts, concentration, the sila, samadhi, prajna, exists according to the theory of causality. It means paticca samutpada. Accordingly, the three disciplines are essential for complete spiritual training or final wisdom. The three training as a whole explains the moral and epistemological aspects of Buddhism. Accordingly, it is clear that is the three training. Also, wisdom has two levels, but not levels. But according to the usage and language, we can see the two levels according to this sutta. Finally, language is the most difficult concept to explain the is a conventional language. I cannot explain this kind of difficult to explain the wisdom because of the Paramartha.
Okay, Venerable, thank you very much for this very comprehensive presentation from based on Mahachattarika Sutta. Thank you very much for all the 4 presenters. We listened to very interesting and informative presentations. Next, we will turn into the discussions. Discussions have only 10 minutes, but I would like even discussion take even less time so that we have more time for questions. So let me invite the discussant number 1, Venerable Aggachitta from Myanmar tradition. Venerable Aggachitta will be commenting on the 3rd presentation. Venerable Aggachitta.
Okay. Greetings, Dhamma greetings to everyone, all the venerables and the other participants of this International Buddhist Conference. First of all, I must give my thanks to the Venerable Khenpo for his very structured exposition of the path leading to the wisdom of perfect Buddhahood. To most followers of the Pali of the Pali tradition, however, this path to perfect Buddhahood would not be in their area of interest. But I also heard in that presentation, in the Venerable Khenpo's presentation, that he said either liberation or perfect Buddhahood, which really makes sense because whether or not one is pursuing the path to perfect Buddhahood or the path to liberation, one still has to go through this sequence of practice: Sila, Samadhi, and Paññā. So it is still, I can use the word Buddhahood not to refer only to the Sammasambuddha, the Gautama Buddha, or one who has perfect enlightenment, but also anyone who has aspirations to become awakened, because the word Buddha means one who is awakened. All right, it need not necessarily be the Buddha, anyone who is awakened, and this can mean an awakened person can refer to anyone who has mundane or supramundane insights into the 4 Noble Truths, which are the core teachings of Buddhism. Now, what's the difference between mundane and supramundane insight? From our Pali Suttas, supramundane insight, a supramundane insight is that breakthrough at the moment of awakening when one has a glimpse of Nibbana or realizes it according to the level of awakening. Well, from the Pali tradition, we have 4 levels of awakening: stream entry, one's return, non-return, and arahantship. The first 3, anyone who has attained any one of the first 3 levels of awakening is called a sikkhā, a trainee, because he still got training to be done in order to reach the ultimate goal of liberation. Whereas an arahant is called a sikkhā, a non-trainee, because he's finished his work. So the difference between the sikkhā's perception of Nibbana and that of the arahant is described in a simile that can be found in Kosambi Sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses on causation, Sutta number 68, where there was a dialogue or discussion between, conversation between a few monks regarding the experience of Nibbana. So one monk said that he realizes that the cessation of existence or being is Nibbana, and he understands it experientially. not through theory or through hearsay or through faith and so forth. And so the other monk said, oh, in that case, you must be an arahant. But he said, no, I'm not an arahant. And then he gave a simile. He says that imagine that a person is traveling to a desert and he's parched and very thirsty. And then he comes across a well, and but there's no rope or bucket for you to draw water from the well. But this person, this traveler, can go to the edge of the well and peer into the depth of the well and can see the water, but cannot touch it. And so he concludes by saying that, well, I can see, I can have a glimpse of Nibbana, but I cannot touch it. Because the monks were assuming that anyone who has experienced Nibbana will be able to experience it wholeheartedly, come into contact with it. In other suttas, it can be shown that actually only the arahant can really experience Nibbana, whereas the Sikkhas can only have a glimpse of it. Okay, so let me stretch the simile a little bit. So imagine that there's another person who comes along and he's got a rope and a bucket, and he goes to the well and he draws water from it and drink from it. And so that would represent the arahant. Now, so these are the two types of supramundane insights. One of the Sikkha, who only has a glimpse of Nibbana and cannot re-experience Nibbana, unlike what the commentaries say about Palasamapati of attainment, fruition attainment. In the suttas, this is only possible for the arahant. And this can also be found in the Ratana Sutta, where he talks about how a person who has overcome sensual pleasures can partake of the deathless, which refers to the arahant.
Venerable.
Yes, I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the thing. Okay, so when I talk about Buddha, the path to Buddhahood, there are some, for those of us who are aspiring to not so perfect Buddhahood, which means this sort of awakening, then he can still be called, still on the path. So for them too, we can apply this similar sequence of Sila, Samadhi, and Paññā. All right, so it is actually similar. Maybe the goal is different, but the means is similar. Another thing that struck me was the Venerable Khenpo's statement that wisdom is included in the cultivation. Wisdom includes cultivation through study, contemplation, and meditation. I think this is a very important point because there are some meditative traditions who ignore this and in fact regard study and contemplation as obstacles in the development of wisdom. Right, so this is something which we need to bear in mind, and this brings to mind a favorite saying of mine, that is, theory without experience is useless, and experience without theory is dangerous, but theory with experience is complete, safe, and ideal.
Thank you
okay.
very much.
The last point I want to say is about his emphasis on the realization of selflessness as the fundamental wisdom to uproot mental afflictions. In Theravada, in the Pali tradition, it is generally believed that realization of any one of the three characteristics of existence would suffice for awakening. However, there is a series of 3 suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya, in the Connected Discourses on the Aggregates, Sutta number 15, 16, and 17, which seem to agree with what the Venerable Khenpo has pointed out that the realization of anatta is indispensable for liberation. Because in Sutta number 15, it says that the person can see any of the 5 aggregates as anicca, as impermanent, but he must continue to see it as suffering, and then finally anatta, or not self, before he can be liberated. In the Sutta number 16, talks about somebody who starts by seeing any of the 5 aggregates as suffering, bypassing anicca, seeing it as suffering, but he still has to go on to develop realization of anatta before he can be liberated. Whereas in Sutta number 17, it talks about a person who starts off straight away with anatta, and if he realizes selflessness, then he can be liberated. So it seems that one can bypass anicca and dukkha and go straight to selflessness in order to attain liberation. And that the realization of selflessness is essential for all, whether you start with anicca or dukkha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Venerable. Thank you very much, Venerable. I know that there is quite a lot of material to
yes.
point out. Maybe the speaker and the discussant also have some kind of exchange later if we have time. Let me move on to the discussant number 2 on the first presentation. It's Venerable Shi Chuan Guan from Sanskrit Chinese tradition. So Venerable Shi Chuan Guan.
Thank you. Namo Pen Shi Shijia Moni Fo. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Good evening to His Holiness, Venerable Sirs, Venerable monks and nuns, brothers and sisters. How are you all today? Good. It's a pleasure to be here. So I want to quickly, I only have 10 minutes. My preamble is usually half an hour, so I'm going to speak faster. First and foremost, I want to thank Venerable Anil for his presentation. I was told that discussants are supposed to sort of pick, ask questions, you know. But when I went through his synopsis and his talk, I kind of quite find much things to you know, ask questions about. Having said that, a few things did come up, which is he mentioned about belief, yeah, that ultimately Buddhism is the religion of wisdom, and that we ultimately want to remove belief, yeah. So I have this thought, wait a minute, belief, isn't that also a synonym for faith, saddha, yeah. So I believe Venerable Anil has his reason for saying that, and I think I know, but I want to just sort of be the advocate, the devil's advocate, if you will, to ask for others, because for others who listen in passing, they may mistaken what he means. So my question is it really simply to remove belief? Because number one, if belief is equals to faith, in the 5 roots and 5 power, the Pancha Indriya, then we talk about Xing Jing Nian Ding Hui, faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. So faith starts, right? And for that matter, all of us, everybody who is present, join in out of faith, isn't it? You have no idea how amazing the talk is going to be, for the 2 days, but because you see, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is speaking at the inaugural speech. You see all the esteemed speakers. So you think, okay, in the past, I may have heard some teachings, it was good. So today should be good. So out of faith, you come. But maybe today, after you come and listen, you find that, hey, this doesn't make sense. Maybe, and as a result, then you verify, and then you say, oh, maybe my faith was misplaced. Or maybe after listening, you find that it makes sense. It is true. Then your faith transforms into a firm faith or a firm confidence. We call it Jing Xing, purified faith. So I believe Venerable Anil was pointing to removal of blind faith into purified faith. So maybe later Venerable Anil can clarify on this. So this is the first point. Second point is that Venerable Anil actually talked about wisdom, but because he didn't go into specifics, so hard for me to find things, you know. But we all agree that, as the other venerables also touched on, the three universal characteristics, right? Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Yeah. So a few things to ask here. So on anatta, yeah, there were some participants who asked about, is it no self or non-self? Yeah, if I can just briefly touch on that, it's like someone saying there's Superman, and you look at everybody present and you cannot find Superman. So you say this person is not Superman, that person is not Superman. And if you cannot find Superman around, we say there's no Superman. Yeah. Similarly, the Buddha goes through is form, permanent, impermanent, and so on. And the conclusion is that form, feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness are all not self, not fit to be considered mine, me, or myself. And so if you cannot find self anywhere, then natural conclusion is no self. To me, it's more about different angles, okay? But my real question, to rock the boat a bit, is no self another expression of emptiness? Yeah, because in the Theravadan tradition, I've met various Bhantes who say, yeah, it's actually the same. But there are also those who say, no, the Buddha didn't teach no self. And their basis is, oh, the Buddha, when he teach about, the Buddha didn't teach emptiness. Sorry, I misspoke. And they say the basis is there's two sutta on sunyata, emptiness. And the two sutta is Mahasunyata Sutta and Chula Sunyayutta Sutta. And inside is talking about voidness, not emptiness. So here I want to just quickly share the link for the first sutta, and it's basically called the Vinaya Sutta. Okay, I'm going to just post it into the chat. You all can go and read the details. But the gist of it is that at the latter half of the text, the Buddha gave this parable of a king who tried to find out where music is from this instrument called the lute. Yeah, and he explained that you cannot find the music anywhere in the parts. Yeah, but through the collection of all these components, then music arises. And this is, in other words, conditional arising existence and emptiness, isn't it? Yeah. So there are other suttas where the Buddha talk about the cut, the wheel, the yoke, and so on, that you cannot find the cut anywhere in the parts. Yeah. And
but I'm really sorry to rush you, but could you really wind up and make your point?
Yes. Yeah. I'm making my point. So the point is, which I made earlier, which is that would you agree that emptiness is but another expression of no self, and no self is but another expression of emptiness? For it is said, Sabbe Dhamma Anattati, which includes not just the five aggregate self, but also all phenomena.
Thank you very much, Venerable. I think I should say that I fully agree with what you said last. Anatma and emptiness are basically the same. Yeah, we will have more discussion. Since we are running out of time, let me move into the third discussion on the presentation number 2. It is Venerable Professor Tashi Sering. Venerable Professor Tashi Sering, can you really be brief so that we can save some time for the discussion? Venerable Tashi Sering, please.
Okay. Sarupapasya karanam kushalasya pasandapada swachit parevatpanam etad putta anushasam. Actually, I don't have any special question to ask to Venerable Pap N. Therefore, I'm going to reflect on the training of wisdom according to Sanskrit tradition. Generally, one can use the terminology of wisdom or prajna in two ways, which are related with the training siksa and related with the perfection paramitas. But it does not mean that they are lacking mutually. Training of wisdom refers to both of the truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, whereas perfection of wisdom refers to the realization of ultimate truth. Knowledge of truth of suffering, truth of origin, and truth of path belong to the conventional truth, and truth of cessation belongs to the ultimate truth according to the Madhyamika school. Or one may say that knowledge of any imputed phenomena are conditional truth according to all the 4 Buddhist philosophical schools or Vaibhashika, etc., and any inherently existed phenomena according to the 3 realist schools or devoid of inherently existent one or free from all the 4 fabrication is the ultimate truth of medievalist school. Or having knowledge of 5 traditional sciences of art, medicine, grammar, logic, and spirituality belongs to the wisdom of knowing conventional truth, and knowing the emptiness of phenomena belongs to ultimate truth. One may classify the wisdom into 3, which are wisdom of listening, wisdom of contemplation, and wisdom of meditation, as stated by Acharya Vasubandhu in Abhidhamma Kosha. One should meditate through resorting on moral conduct shila, endowed with the wisdom of listening and contemplation. Vritasya sruta chidvan bhaunayam pravichete. So focusing words with meaning and focusing only with the meanings are called the wisdom of listening, wisdom of contemplation, and wisdom of meditation, respectively, as stated in Abhidhamma Kosha. Nam ubay arth vishayam surtamay adiya tiya. According to the medieval school, meditation has 2 kinds which are related with conditional truth and ultimate truth. As long as the practitioner focuses on emptiness, suffering, ugliness, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, dependent origination, breathing, and so forth, that one is called meditation on conventional phenomena. Those meditation can temporarily lessen or subdue emotion affliction of the practitioner, whereas when the practitioner focuses to the reality or the nature of phenomena of emptiness, then that meditation is considered as meditation on ultimate truth, which can be permanently eradicate emotion affliction of the practitioner, as stated in a sutra. A person who has more attachment can abandon the attachment through meditating or focusing on impurities, flesh, fat, skin, and skeleton. Water of loving kindness is for the fire of hatred, path of dependent origination is for ignorance, and classification of realms is for the pride. It is also stated in Abhidhamma Kosha, in order to enter the meditation, one should have the mindfulness of ugliness and inhalation and exhalation of breath for those who have more attachment and conceptual thoughts respectively. Tatra avtaro ashupaya cha anapana smritin cha. So, meditation on the first cannot liberate the practitioner from the cyclic existence, though the practitioner can attain higher rebirth, and meditation on the selflessness or emptiness can lead the practitioner to the liberation, as Acharya Nagarjuna said in the letter to a friend. One should meditate on loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, though one cannot achieve higher aim or liberation, but can achieve happiness of Brahma rim. Maitri karuna upeksha muditascha sada samyak bhavanti tyabhyam. Vasubandhu also said in Abhidhamma Kosha, for higher rims, moral contact is the main, and for the cessation from cyclic existence, meditation is the main. Saurgaya shilam pradhanyayat visam yogam bhaunaya. With regard to the perfection of wisdom, wisdom is the main aim of bestowing teachings by Buddha, as Acharya Shantideva said in the Bodhisattva Charavatara. All these secondary things are taught by Buddha in order to gain wisdom. Imam parikam sarv pragyat hi muninjango. Moreover, when the order of the 6 prohibitions are arranged, the preceding prohibitions are the causes, inference, grosses, whereas the succeeding prohibitions are the result, superiors, and subtle, as Arya Medinath had said in Mahayana Sutra Alankara. Later ones are the product of dependent on the preceding ones. They resort in inferiors and superiors, and also grossness and subtleness. Therefore, the order of them prohibitions are arranged. Etymology of Sanskrit word Prajñā. When Arya Medinath explained the etymology of the 6 prohibitions in the Mahayana Sutra Alankara regarding the Prajñā, he said, it is stated because of realizing the ultimate. Param arth jnanat cha ukti. Sakyapindita in his text Munimat Prakash explained the etymology as pra plus gya. Pra means param, alias ultimate. Gya means realization. So, because we're having the realization of ultimate, it is called prajñā. Or pra means param, which refers to supreme, and gya means jnana, which refers to knowledge or consciousness. So, supreme or best among the knowledge or consciousness is called prajñā.
Could
it is also stated in.
Wind up. Could you please?
Okay. It is.
Thank you.
Okay. It is also stated in Ornament of Discourse. Buddha probably taught 6 perfections concerning the 3 trainings. Among them, first 3 perfections of generosity, moral conduct, and tolerance belong to the training of moral conduct, Shila. Last 2 perfections of concentration and wisdom have 2 aspects of training of concentration, Samadhi, and wisdom, Prajñā. And 1 perfection of effort, even belongs to all the 3 trainings. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Tashi. Thank you for all the 4 presenters and also all for 3 discussants. I think by listening to these very erudite presentations and also through our general knowledge, we know that we have been dealing with one of the most difficult themes in Buddhist practice, namely Prajñā, and also the concept of Anatma. So if, we don't need to be complacent to think that, we can give a comprehensive, full understanding of these very subtle concepts within less than 2 hours. But our speakers and our discussant raised some very important questions, and then we have also got some very important questions. I don't think we have time to go through all the questions, but there were some very interesting the things were raised in the course of the discussion, particularly in the responses. Venerable Aggabodhi Aggachitta asked this question about seeing the Nibbana and the realizing Nibbana, and Venerable Shishuan Guan pointed out the Shunyata and Anatma, and Venerable Tashi pointed out the difference between 2 truths. So there's quite a lot of material for us to discuss. Unfortunately, we will not be able to give time to all the questions, but just to begin the question and answer session, let me just recognize Venerable Geshe Namkha, who would like to ask a question. I understand that his question will be translated from Tibetan to English. So I would like to give the first opportunity for Venerable Geshe Namkha to ask his question. Please go ahead. Yeah, Reverend, go ahead.
Can we spotlight?
Kiawan number Tsongwalia, Tash Tere, the Samri Shuir. And 3 Labasum Ginani, Sherabgi Labicolia, Sonson, Sherab Labicolia, that is Shirak Yabuson, Tene near Tewashua Chilia, Nyangde Tobala, Labasum Ginangi, Sherabgi Laba, Nepal to Gubi Gubze, Tartuba Carres. Tsujimgi laba da tingi zingi laba tsamgi michoba sherabgi laba ngebar gobi gyumzen karres pena tada dung wonbe shung mabu naliya dungegi tsawa sebal tus cheche sungyorwa chaza ti indu sebal rubuji na tingi zingi topgi ko katuyorwa midubu gumi tingi zingina ya katu yore achese tinde indu ani nyangde tobal ngebardu sherb gobi gyumze tardu bad karres.
So Geshe Tenzin Namkhala has one question for the Theravada master. So today everybody commonly explained the wisdom is very important to achieving liberation and Buddhahood, but nobody explained why it is so important to practice wisdom for achieving liberation, because many Abhidharma treatises explained the the clutch or attachment is the root of the samsara. Attachment or desire can be eliminated through practicing ugliness. Why it is not enough to practice shila and samadhi to achieving liberation? This is a question for the Venerable from Theravada Master. Thank you.
I think I would like to ask Venerable Shakya to provide the short answer to this question, Venerable.
Thank you for very valuable questions. First of all, let me say that, in fact, when we talk about the Paññā or the wisdom is in a very, very different varieties of wisdom. It is beginning from the starting of the learning and aspiring itself until the end of it. In a way that liberation itself is the wisdom again. So therefore, when we talk about the why, wisdom is very important. Because without wisdom, without knowing what you are going to study, what you are going to practice, how you are going to practice it, that is a main idea. So that's why I have been saying that wisdom is the path and the goal itself, is the means and ends. So therefore, wisdom is a very important role there. Of course, in order to have a sila or samadhi, without the wisdom, without the knowledge, how can you know that it is a sila? So it is embedded, it is kind of a, you can't, in a real practice, it is not kind of a gradual process. It is a more or less, it is embedded in a one. That's why in English, we call threefold training. So that is a simple answer I can give. For the answer for the Venerable Shikwan, which he raised a very important questions, and especially about the faith. Because when I say that the Buddhism doesn't believe in faith, doesn't believe it is about the Paññā, it is about the religion of wisdom. Don't forget that the word saddha, it is not actually translated as a faith. Saddha in Buddhism, it comes alone, is always negative. Saddha is always come with the Paññā. That is what is akaravati saddha. The saddha is a saddha based on the regions. So otherwise, it will be the, what he calls amulika saddha. It is a groundless faith. So therefore, I prefer to translate the word saddha in a more kind of a trust rather than a faith or confidence. If you believe in a faith and confidence, it's in that. Because when you believe, it means that you are stupid, you don't know. But if you know, you become a Buddha, then you will know that this is a pen. I don't have to say that I believe this is a pen. So the belief, the way we use it, it is very, very relative in a sense that when I say that this is, I believe to be a pen, then it means that I don't know this is a pen. But if I know with my wisdom itself that this is a pen, so that's why I don't need to believe. It's become a Buddha, it's become a knowing, it's become a wisdom itself. That's why we say that Buddhism is a religion of wisdom. And in
thank you very much, Venerable. I think that provides the answer. Just one remark about the first question, which, as you said, very important. Why only the raga or trishna eradication is not enough, but why we need prajna? I think ultimately the trishna or raga rises from ignorance. So in order to give up ignorance, we need to have, I think, prajna. That is where the prajna comes as fundamental. Thank you very much, Venerable Dr. Anil Shakya. We will move into, we have got a number of questions. Let me be selective. I think we have got an interesting question from NBM Nam. And the question is about the right view. It's the noble path, right view is referring to wisdom, mundane wisdom or transcendental wisdom. So this again about sammat ditti or samyak drusti, whether it is mundane or whether it is supramundane. I think this question can be answered by all the speakers. Whoever volunteers to answer it question. Would Venerable Anil Shakya would like to start, but then other masters also can respond. Whether it is mundane or supramundane.
Well, it is both, because we are living in a both world. Our body is, in daily life, we are in a mundane. So in order to go to the supramundane, we have to based on our mundane life. So in a sense that, I guess that it is not a mundane and super mundane, but it has to be in the what condition we are talking about. It has to be both. It depends
okay,
on
Venerable, okay, I think I would like also to ask Venerable Paññā, would you like to respond to the same question? Te Pat Pap An. Yes, yes. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing the name correctly. Okay. Anybody else would like to respond to this question about whether it is mundane or supramundane?
Dr. Kempo Jordan, you want to respond?
Yeah, can I ask what is it referring to? Like in general, like a wisdom that is mundane wisdom or super mundane wisdom? Is that the question?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, as Venerable Shakta said, you know, as a human being and also particularly a Buddhist practitioner, being in samsara, wherever you are in this world, trying to cross over.
Đặt câu hỏi trả lời xem phải ngồi giúp xem.
Okay, cross over this samsara. Yes, and eventually you will also hopefully have the realization of supramundane wisdom. So that means you have both. Until you get there, you have to deal with the mundane wisdom. Everything, starting from how to cook, how to read, all of those are wisdom too, right? You have to have those things. How to drive also needs a wisdom. Without the wisdom, how to, without knowing how to do it, you will not be able to drive. So that's why all of these are mundane wisdom. But then eventually, through the practice of the three folds of training, you will be able to go to the other shore of samsara. And that is where you first have the experience of supramundane wisdom. And that wisdom can be cultivated through the path of accumulation, path of application, path of seeing, path of meditation, a path of no more learning. This is how you develop this supramundane wisdom higher and higher, more complete. At the end, completion of the perfection of that wisdom is called the arhatship or Buddhahood or whatever you call it.
Thank you very much, Venerable. I think that raises a very interesting question. Let me just remind something that came up in the discussion. Now, I think it comes from Venerable Dr. Buddhakatnuri Vinita Thera's discussion on Mahachattārisaka. It's very important to begin with. You have to start with Prajñā or Paññā. Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Prajñā at the beginning. But then again, the interesting thing is it is also the culmination. So at both levels, I think there is Paññā, but Paññā is the beginning level as Samma Ditti to practice the path taught by the Buddha, finally ending in the, ultimately in Prajñā. I think that is where this beginning and the culmination, both being Paññā. So you start with mundane and then you end up in supramundane. Of course,
Professor,
yes.
I think Venerable Paññā is trying to speak. Please.
Yes,
go ahead, please.
I am able to unmute my microphone now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
You. Yeah, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Asanga Tilakaratne, for inviting me to answer about the question between right view, between mundane prajna and supramundane. In my talk, my presentation, I title my paper, Wisdom is the Path. So in our view of looking at things, we don't look at is a sharp contrast between mundane and supermundane. Like for example, I give you an example that our teacher used to give. Let's say we live Berlin and another city called Frankfurt in Germany. If we are standing at any point between Berlin and Frankfurt, if we stand here and we face Berlin, we are walking to Berlin. If we stand here and we face Frankfurt, then we walk into Frankfurt. So then at each point that we are standing, there is including both Berlin and Frankfurt at the same point, depending where we turn our face, the direction. So the same thing with Prajñā. The same thing with Prajñā. It is a path. Wisdom is the path. Wherever we begin to turn toward a noble goal. We begin to turn to a noble life, a holy life, and we begin to cultivate it. Then from this point, we come closer to Berlin. And if we turn around, we come closer to Frankfurt. So on each of the path, we have wisdom, and this wisdom is cultivated. And later on, the life, we embody our understanding and wisdom. So in our practice of the 5 mindfulness training, our teacher said that aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I vow to develop compassion in order to protect life. So awareness is the beginning of wisdom, but that wisdom had not been translated and embodied in our daily life. So slowly, slowly, we can embody it, and slowly, slowly, we turn our whole life into a life of wisdom. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable. I think we are running out of time. We will move into, there are several number of questions, but maybe perhaps one last question about, interesting question on the difference between the knowledge of the...
Professor, we have Rick on the line. So can we get Rick? Can you unmute?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Rick, can you please ask your questions?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. If it's not, then we can't hear Rick's. The Rick question is, can you tell us what is the difference between the Abhisammabuddhi and Abhisammabhujati, or just different aspect from the same thing to all Venerable?
I think it's basically a question on Pali. So why don't we move into Venerable Dr. Vinitha? Venerable, are you around? Or Venerable Lanli Shakya? Either from, because it's from basically Pali tradition. Venerable,
Venerable Sichuan, you want to answer? Please unmute.
The question is what?
Abhisambodhi and Abhisambhujati.
Actually, I would say that it is the same thing, because Sambodhi and Sambhujati, the verb exactly is a bhujati, means that understanding. So it's a different, just a grammatically different, but actually both words are the same meaning.
I think Venerable, yeah, very true. Abhisambhujati is a verb. Abhisambodhi is the noun. Both are basically seem to be coming from the same thing. I think, Mr. Cassil, I think with your permission, we will try to wind up the discussion right now, because we are running out of time. But before winding up this very wonderful and important informative session, let me make 1 or 2 very brief observations as the chairman of the session. One thing that came into my mind when I was listening to all the presenters was that it is so very wonderful for different Buddhist traditions to come together and discuss. Then only we realize that we have been practicing and we have been doing basically the same thing. I think because of the differences are basically, as I understand, differences are very much cultural, linguistic, but ultimately the teaching of the Buddha, although it has gone across many different traditions in the geographical context in the world, Buddha's teaching has to be ultimately one and the same. I think that way, I mean, there is no divide here. Divide, I would describe as more cultural and linguistic divide. But if you take ultimately the Buddhist practice leading into Prajñā, from Prajñā to purification and wisdom, Visuddhi and Vimukti, should be the same. So in that sense, I think this particular conference, particularly I'm taking part in the last part of this, I would say something very, very important for all the Buddhist traditions to get together and develop our own self-understanding. Now, in this globalized world, Buddhists have been physically meeting with each other, all Buddhists going into, except for this corona year, we have been traveling all over the world. But I think this is much more important, that we are really going into the heart of the traditions and trying to understand. So let me congratulate all the organizers of this conference, and let me congratulate all the compassionate speakers and the discussant of this this evening for this very valuable conference, and thanking all the listeners and everybody who participated, and everybody who listened, everybody who asked questions, and also people behind the scene, including Mr. Cassie Liu, who organized this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
With your permission, let me wind up the session for this evening.
Thank you, Professor Asanga, and thank you for all the venerable speaker discussants and all the participants. I'm on the behalf of Tibetan Buddhist Center, Casey, here to pass over to chairperson of the next sessions of valedictory closing. So please, the team member to take over from the session